All right. Very happy to welcome you here to the Colin Powell School for Civic and Global Leadership. We are the School of Social Sciences here at the City College of New York. We have leadership and other programs. Over 4,000 students choose to major in departments in the Colin Powell School. Our motto is lifting leaders, shifting power, transforming society. A majority of our students are the first in their family to get a college degree. A majority are immigrants or children of immigrants, majority from historically marginalized communities. We help them succeed. But the people in our audience today are going to have important leadership roles in the future. Today's talk is part of our Conversations in Leadership series. These gatherings, very special. They're not lectures, they're not performances, they're opportunities for honest conversations with leaders who have achieved remarkable success with a sense of purpose and responsibility, leaders who embody the values that General Powell stood for. This series exists because of the generosity and vision of Susan Goings and her husband, Rich Goings. They believed, as we do, that leadership is best understood not in theory, but stories of resilience, stories of tough choices, values upheld and tested. Susan, we are very grateful for your partnership, for the way you continue to inspire our students with your example of entrepreneurial spirit and your lifetime contribution to empowering others, especially women and young people around the globe. Today, Susan, who is chairman and CEO of World Youth Clubs, is joined by a leader who spent his career helping organizations navigate one of the most important currencies in public life, trust. Richard Edelman is the president and CEO of Edelman, the largest independent communications firm in the world. Under his leadership, Edelman has become a voice of conscience in business, asking tough questions about how companies, governments, and institutions earn and keep the trust of the people they serve. His insights from the Edelman Trust Barometer have shaped how leaders around the globe think about responsibility and accountability in their work. Bringing Susan and Richard together offers us a chance to hear about leadership from two different but deeply complementary perspectives. One in building and empowering people and communities, understanding and shaping the trust that makes leadership possible. I want to thank both Susan and Richard for sharing their wisdom and their time with us today, and I want to thank all of you for being part of the community of learning. Please join me in welcoming Susan Goings and Richard Edelman.
Thank you, Kevin. Anyway, I'm really glad that all of you are here. I'm particularly glad that you are here because there's so much going on in the world today, in addition to what their concerns were. I mean, whether you're talking about the Middle East or Ukraine and Russia, which all of those things you're involved in with the World Economic Forum. And in addition to that, we have Cracker Barrel. And I know some of you in your class have been studying that, which ended up being a debacle that your team stepped in to take care of. So we will move on to that. But I want to first start with, you are a descendant of a CCNY graduate.
So my grandfather emigrated from Russia in 1886 and came third-class steerage, and his family lived in Brooklyn, and he was CCNY 1901, and he went to NYU Law School afterwards, 1903, and he became a trial attorney and was very successful. And my father grew up in Brooklyn and then on the Upper West Side, and I saw a photo of my grandfather with his 1901 CCNY class, which he treasured when I was, 13, and I was training for my bar mitzvah, and he was like, "You can learn Hebrew," and I'm like, "I really hope I can. I'm not as smart as you." Anyway, so we have great affection for this school because it made the Edelman family possible in this country. So there you are.
Well, I like to think he's watching and really proud of you as you are now running a $1.2 billion public relations firm, the largest one in the world. incredible. You know, I mean, I get confused by it sometimes as myself, and I've been on the periphery of this business for a really long time. The difference between, how is public relations different from advertising and marketing and communications? How do you simply explain that to somebody that might not know the difference between those?
Well, the simplest way to differentiate is that we don't buy space. We have to earn the journalist's opinion. And over time, I think it's a more effective means of communication. I just wonder how many of you even look at ads. You have either ad blockers or you skip it, and you're in social conversations, and increasingly media is creators. And so I suspect most of you have a few select creators who you follow, and their opinions matter to you more than anybody else. And so that's our media world. We just did a launch of Samsung's new folding phone, and 1/3 of the people who came to the press conference were journalists, and 2/3 were creators.
Wow.
So tells you a lot.
When you say creator, is that the same thing as an influencer?
Yeah.
That's the new terminology for an influencer, is a creator?
Creators are, you know, the next gen.
Okay.
Fair enough?
But they are still influencing.
They're influencing you, but they would rather be creating than influencing.
Okay.
But they influence through their creation. How's that?
Okay. What is the impact of creators in today's public relations world? It sounds like immense.
I mean, the smart companies are starting news dissemination through creators. I'll give you an example. Dove just did a collab with Crumble. I don't know how many of you know about this, but Dove is a long-established brand. It had super love, except for Gen Z, which was kind of love. And then this idea of partnering with Crumble, you guys all know what Crumble is because you're Gen Z, cookies and all this. So there's a chocolate chip scented Dove, and it's kind of crazy. And it was done with Walmart, and it sold out like, and it gave Dove huge social cred. And that's the future. You've got to put your trust into the creators to make this world work.
No, but does Edelman come up with that idea, or you guys came up with that idea?
Sometimes we do, and that's a good one.
So you put the two companies together.
Like that.
I'd love to know what your company, who thought, oh, let's put soap or hand lotion
Probably
and
people
cookies
your
together.
age. Because I wouldn't have. That would be way over. Chocolate chip smelling Dove.
I think the first time that we met was probably at the World Economic Forum in Davos, probably 20, 25 years ago.
Yep.
And I remember the first time I saw you talking about the Trust Barometer, the Edelman Trust Barometer. Can you share with us exactly what that is, how that concept came about, and what you do every year?
So we've been doing a study of trust since year 2000, and there was an incident at the World Trade Organization, which was basically protesting globalization, and the civil society people said it's going to cost people jobs and it's going to decrease incomes, and so the net result was we wondered what was the power of NGOs relative to business, government, and media, and so we studied it in 4 countries the first year and found out that NGOs were the most trusted institution, and that, as we expanded our geographic footprint, continued and expanded. So NGOs until 2020 were the most trusted institution. And an NGO could be anything from the Catholic Church to Greenpeace, but it's civil society. Then in 2020 it became government because it's the only institution big enough to handle COVID. And then it was business from 2021 till today. And so it's 5 years of business being on top because it's the most competent and the most ethical. If you think of a 2x2 chart, x-axis competence, y-axis ethics, business is in the top right corner. NGOs are ethical, but not so competent, and both government and media are in the bottom left corner, neither competent nor ethical. And the difference in developed markets versus developing, this is interesting, in single-party states where government and media is hard to distinguish, meaning government owns the media, there's much higher trust in both government and media. Why? because developing markets like Saudi or UAE or like this have had outstanding growth records. And so trust, in a way, follows economic progress. That's a fundamental point. If you don't grow, you have low trust. So the key to the trust puzzle, in fact, is to restore some level of growth, but also a level of growth not just for the upper quartile of income, but for everybody.
Well, General Powell used to say that trust is the glue that keeps people together. And so what are the most concerning trends that you see from the results of the most recent Trust Barometer?
I think the mass class divide, the top quartile versus bottom quartile, is important, but that's been so for the last decade. What's really nerve-wracking in this latest study is the rise of grievance. And I don't know what any of you think about Charlie Kirk. I disagreed with him politically, but he was brave enough to go to universities. He was brave enough to have debates with people. And no one who's a father and got little kids and a wife should be murdered. And so that person who pulled the trigger, unfortunately, is in this aggrieved group. And the highest grievance is among Gen Z. More than half of Gen Z, more of your people your age, feel aggrieved. The system doesn't work. I can't pay my bills. I don't believe in the future. As a matter of fact, only 30% of Americans believe that they'll be better off in the next generation.
And what would that have been 10 years ago?
Oh, it would have been 60 or 70.
And what do you think?
And in our generation, it would have been 90.
And so what's happening? What do you see?
I think that there's real concern about AI as a job killer as opposed to job creator. I think there's real worry about cost of housing. Why is Mondami ahead in the mayor's race? Inflation, people can't afford apartments, and that people are just nervous about their prospects, and they don't see a path forward. And that's got to change. We've got to make you young people the most as opposed to the least optimistic. It's a really crazy thing, Susan, that our age group is much more optimistic than young people. It's the first time that we've seen this. It's an inversion of normal.
Do you see any way to change that trend, to turn that around?
Yes. We need more young entrepreneurs. We need more people able to afford to go to school here and go on and be important parts of society, in whether it's in business or government or in any other way.
But they also need jobs when they get out of school.
That's right.
And have you seen the latest Morgan Stanley analysis of the S&P 500 regarding AI? They said that 90% of all jobs, and this is across the S&P, they didn't actually, there were a few companies they did not interview, but they said it will affect 90% of the jobs across the board and will save almost $1 trillion for those companies. But Rick and I, my husband, is good friends with Richard, and I were talking. I said, but doesn't that mean if that $1 trillion is saved, that means it's saved because they're not paying salaries to those employees who will either be replaced or move to part-time, maybe because of AI?
So, Susan, in an interesting way, I'm not so afraid of this, and I'll tell you why.
Well, that's good.
Because I think that small business historically has been the engine of growth in this country, and it can be again. So I think small business is now accounting for 50% of jobs. It could go to 75%. And you in the audience might have two jobs. You might have a main job and then a hustle job. And that can be okay for a certain period of time until you get the first job to pay you enough. But our social compact should be to give them the chance to go get a loan to start a business, or have a way in which to be able to do their side hustle.
Yeah. It does feel like, especially young people, whether it's Gen Z or even a little bit older than them, that they feel overwhelmed, that there's so many bad things happening in today's world. I mean, talk about trust, just with vaccines. And now it just is so confusing. I mean, as a mom, I trusted what my pediatrician said. And now that's being called into question. You do represent pharmaceutical companies
Yes.
that have vaccines. How are you dealing with that?
So, a staggering statistic I saw yesterday, 15% of American families are not doing vaccination. So when Rick and Susan and I were growing up, if a neighbor got the mumps, you got an automatic sleepover because your mom wanted you to have the mumps and measles and chickenpox and German measles. And the only good thing is I got a polio vaccine, but beyond that, there was no such thing. So I went through every one of these from 6 to 8 years old. Same with you? Same with you? Give or take. I mean, like I had more sleepovers with sick people. And then one time I was the firstie, and then everyone wanted to sleep over with me. It was like, okay, cool. But this is ridiculous. It's just completely false science. And I'm afraid that it's a side effect of COVID when institutions lost belief and there was a denigration of experts and of scientists and of the CDC, which, I mean, I don't even know today, what was the benefit of wearing a mask? What was the benefit of lockdown? What was the benefit of 6 foot or 3 foot distancing? I can't even remember, it was this long, 3 foot, not 6. And I know that we were doing the best we could because it was a dread disease and we all wanted to, live. And my mother-in-law died and I watched this and it was horrible. And she didn't have drugs. It didn't exist. Hydroxychloroquine, that was a fake. There were all this stuff, the miracle drugs. So we've really set science back badly and scientists. So, and the knock-on effect is, oh, well, we should cut back cancer research and we should cut back other things. This is bad. So I am personally dedicated to restoring belief in healthcare. I mean, this is the biggest part of Edelman's business, and we've got to get people to believe again that what doctors say is true, that this is not all about pharma companies making profits. No, it's about people having a better life. That's the truth. But we have to prove it, because those 2 years really weakened people's belief.
So what are you...
And this is interesting, Susan, sorry to interrupt you.
No.
We have to do both the ground game and the air game. What I mean by this is, it's one thing to talk from the top down, the Moses model. People don't believe that anymore. We have to do the ground game. We have to have people call and knock on your door and say, young man, if you had a vaccine, or if your grandma had a vaccine, and what can we do to help you to get her to the place to get a shot? And this is old school. It's like politics, knocking on doors, getting people to sign for voting. But that's what we have to do, because the most believable people are friends, family, and local people. Pastors, really important. Churches, really important. And so are pharmacists. And so is your GP, the general practitioner, the regular doctor.
And your neighbors. Friends,
and your
family,
neighbors.
yeah.
And we have, and fellow employees, which is why employee communication is so important. Something that Mr. Goings knows a little about, because that was the basis of growth of Tupperware. Yeah. Employee communications, totally undervalued in companies. They're always the last people being told. Total mistake. Trust is built from inside out. Concentric circles. Employees, customers, communities, shareholders, not the other way around.
And so what does a company like Edelman do to change that and start from the ground up as opposed from the top down?
Well, the first thing is to know is during COVID, we did several campaigns to point out to people that admitting to having mental health problems, if you're a man, for example, doesn't make you less of a man. It makes you, frankly, less of a risk to be suicidal and hopeless. And talk to people. And similarly, Susan, we spent days getting people of diverse backgrounds to go into clinical trials, because the initial clinical trials were too much just who happened to be next to doctors. And we had to get people black and brown to be in the clinicals in order to believe the data, in order to get them to get vaccinated. So all these things I'm very proud of.
But if you're talking about the COVID vaccine, even today there's controversy whether you still get it or you don't get it, if it's needed or not needed. And I mean, I got a text today from my pharmacy telling me that they're available if we want to get them. So it's still out there. So are you still doing PR work for that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we got a famous actor who you would know, and he had been a COVID vax rejecter, and then he contracted a form of cancer, and he was, in remission but vulnerable. And we approached him and said, there are 8 million people like you. Why don't you allow us to tape you? And he said, okay, I'll get a vaccine too. And he got a vaccine, and then we taped him getting a vaccine, and he talked about, I've had a change of heart, I've had a change of health. So there was an uptick in people who had cancer getting vaccinated. So again, you got to find these windows.
Yeah. You were talking earlier about chicken pox and your parents wanting you to be exposed. Even my son Christopher, who's now 41, when he was a little boy, came down with chicken pox before his birthday, and we were having a Mario Brother lookalike come to the party. It was a Mario Brothers theme party. And so I had to call and say, do you have a Mario who's had the chicken pox? And so he actually put dots on and came.
Cute.
And then I called all the parents and said, if you want your child exposed and they haven't had it, then please come on. And everybody came because you wanted your kid exposed. So that is, I hadn't thought about that in years, so thank you for that.
Here we are.
Yeah, good. So this morning I was reading that, is the New York Times your client by any chance?
No.
Okay, good, because this morning I saw there was a $15 billion lawsuit filed by our president about defamation. And you often do crisis management, which is not a big part, right, is it, of Edelman? But
It's like 3% of our revenue and 50% of our fame.
Yeah, okay. And probably some of the most, I shouldn't say fun, but interesting thing to work on?
Yep.
I would think so. So that's going to be a challenge for somebody I know.
No, but we've done a lot of work with universities. For example, we worked with Penn State after the Paterno incident. Maybe all of you are too young to remember, but yeah, there was bad treatment of young boys and by assistant coach and covered up. And we worked with University of Virginia after the Charlottesville march, and we've worked with Michigan State after it came out that the doctor for the gymnastics team was abusing women. And all these things universities have to cope with. University of Chicago, when there was the occupation of the campus post-Gaza. So, I mean, it's the cauldron. At the same time, it's the opportunity melting pot of the country. It's the best of us, and we feel really privileged to work with these schools.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of them that you just worked on was Cracker Barrel. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us about that?
I didn't work on that client, but I know that our team was very important in helping the brand recover. It's about what I can say.
Okay.
I'm sorry I can't tell you everything. If you work at Edelman, I will. That's for later in your life.
Well, it seemed to work, whatever you did, because it's gone away, which is always the hope. So how if you have clients who sell a product that everybody could use, how careful do they have to be not to offend one group? Because there's such a divide in our country now, whether it's political or social or economic. I mean, how do you
do that?
Yeah, walk on that fine line.
Well, I think that there are areas where you can appeal to everyone and not be political and not be divisive. And I think you need to find the parts that we agree on about opportunity or fun or pleasure or interesting and I'm not saying to be dull. I think, in fact, some of the Super Bowl communications a couple of years ago were dull because everybody was so afraid to make a mistake. But it can't just be about function. It has to be about culture, but it shouldn't be about culture in a way that is divisive and that sides you with one part of the country. I mean, there are certain brands that are oriented to certain geographies or political backgrounds, but in general, brands are apolitical. and should stay that way.
And so that's what you tell all your clients, just be careful.
No, we tell them to be in culture, to speak up, to be part of people's lives. But, I mean, as an example, I mean, eBay auctioned off Elton John's clothing. I mean, he has lots of closets, you can believe. So, but we opened a pop-up store on Canal Street, and it was crazed. People wanted a piece of Elton John, whether or not they could afford it, whether or not they wanted just to be with Elton. He wasn't there, but he was there, you know, with his clothes. And those are the moments in culture that unify us, and we should find more of those.
So you represent lots of big companies. You mentioned Samsung, also Microsoft, right? So if you represent Samsung, you cannot also represent Apple, or can you?
No,
No.
they're the devil.
Is that they're the Is that frustrating sometimes?
No.
No.
I love my Samsung phone. Where is it here? I am a loyalist. You should all buy this. Totally the best. Really strong stuff. I drop it and it doesn't break. So.
On another subject, last night when I was talking to you, you brought up the Middle East, and you said I can talk to you about that. And do you see a path for peace?
The one thing that I hope is achieved in the next period of time is a sense that there's not going to be a winner or loser here. That if there's a winner or loser, then inevitably the loser is going to try and rise up and, you know, fight more. And there has to be a mutually agreeable outcome. And I say this going into High Holy Days. I think Jewish New Year is a good time to reflect on all of your life. And it was a very strange period to be Jewish in New York after October 7th and the marches, and, you know, I hadn't ever seen that in my life. And and I understand people being angry about 62,000 people killed in Gaza. I do. And I understand also 1,700 people killed in Israel and 250 hostages. And I heard Rachel Poland speak in Chicago 2 weeks ago about her son Hirsch, who was a hostage and was this close to being saved and then was shot by Hamas. And he was she's from Chicago. She grew up blocks away from me. Her grandma lives in the same building I do in Chicago. And it's all very close. So, but I had to go to the Middle East and talk to my colleagues in Dubai and Abu Dhabi and Saudi and listen to their truth too. Mm-hmm. And that was important for me to do, and it was important for them to hear, and vice versa. So,
do you see any hope?
Yes, I see hope, because on a purely economic basis, this experiment should work. Mm-hmm. I mean, Israel's a vibrant economy. It needs labor. The Saudis, UAE, they all want, you know, this area to be calm and function. And we have to find a way past hatred. It's hard.
Okay. What about Ukraine and Russia? What your reflections on that?
I'm very much a person who believes that Ukraine needs to exist and be a viable independent country and not be some kind of serf to the Russians. And again, I'm old enough to remember the Cuban Missile Crisis and my dad basically saying we're going to go to war, and your duck and cover drills in school are real. And so I don't have any love for the Russians. And so, but I really hope that the United States supports Ukraine and that Putin is cut off from his oil revenues so that there can be a fair peace. I saw Zelensky in Davos. You know, he's a TV personality who's turned into a country leader, and he's an impressive guy. I mean, the presumption was, oh, you know, we'll just do a 4-day invasion and that'll be that. And the Ukrainians are so impressive, so creative, so hustle, and they want to be free. I think we should, and the Europeans want Ukraine to be free because it stands against Russia continuing to move. So that's a long answer.
Well, it's okay. You're running a global company. You have
am.
offices in 60
cities.
60 cities. So you see around the world conflict, what's going on. And we're not even here in the United States. I mean, I run World Youth Clubs. We're in 50 countries. We only hear about a few of the wars that are actually taking place around the world here in the United States. We focus on the Middle East and on Ukraine and Russia, but there's others, you know.
But even you don't even need a war. I mean, in the last month, the governments of Nepal, Sri Lanka, and almost Indonesia fell. Indonesia had to sack the finance minister to survive. And it was all driven by people your age, all Gen Z, who said, I cannot stand to see the rulers' kids with Gucci bags and fancy cars, and we don't have enough to eat. And this is not okay. So they rose up, they did protests, they did what has always happened when there's unfairness. Mm-hmm. And the governments have changed, and they have younger people running them and things like this. So you guys have a very important voice and an important role to play in society in making change.
So what concerns you the most that you see going on around the world?
Just that Gen Z is feeling so alienated, and that they're the future and they don't see the way forward, and they're aggravated by what they see on social media, and that they're isolated and feeling. I literally saw that 50% of Gen Z doesn't have enough money to go on dates. So you just don't go on dates. I don't know. That seems a very strange place to be in the world. That you're isolated because of money. I don't know, we used to get a six-pack and split it up and talk, and that was good enough. I mean, I pitched in 50 cents and somebody other did 50 cents, and suddenly we had some Schlitz. And only Rick Goings knows what Schlitz is. The beer that made Milwaukee famous. I don't recommend it.
So I would love to hear from some of the Gen Z audience and see what they have to say, what questions they might have for you. Anybody have a question for Richard Edelman? Yes.
Richard. Thank you. Thank you so much for the wisdom that you shared so far. Sorry, my voice is a little sore. I partied over the weekend, guys.
What's your name?
Nixon.
Hi, Nixon.
I'm currently studying economics, and I wanted to know, what are some habits that you have that keep you sharp and on top of things to make sure that you're running your companies effectively? Okay,
so I have a few rules. The first is I exercise every day. The second is I try to sleep between 7 and 8 hours. The third is I do not look at my phone at all unless it's to check the Chicago Bears or Cubs score after 8 o'clock. I'm off my phone. The fourth is I always have a book I'm reading. The fifth is I try to have at least one networking meeting every day. Meaning I meet a journalist, I meet a business person, I meet somebody for breakfast, for lunch, whatever. I have a big network that way. And the sixth is every victory is a team victory and every defeat is mine. Meaning if we lose, like we had a huge pitch for Mars Corporation, the candy guys, and we lost. Everybody was like, oh, Richard's gonna be so pissed because it was a lot of money. And I called them together and I said, we lost, get up to me, go back to work tomorrow. And we should have been better at this. I take responsibility. Thank you all for your hard work. End of story.
But taking responsibility is huge. Because I think that's actually a problem today. A lot of people, they want to first blame somebody else before thinking, okay, wait a second, I don't have money to go on a date. Maybe I need to get a job so I can earn some money to go on a date. Or I don't have much free time, but at least I could work 10 hours a week or something. I mean, do you see that as a problem, that people are not accepting responsibility?
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah.
that answer your question, Nixon?
Thank you.
Good.
I was an economics major. It's the best major.
Hi.
Hello. Let me stand. My name is Ashley Cargill, and I'm a double major here at CCNY, Art and Advertising Communications. And my question is, what are 2 major tips that you would give to an ad and PR major here at CCNY?
Okay, the first is to learn a language other than English, because there are 65 million Latinos in this country, and also it's going to enable you to take foreign assignments. So if, again, Rick, you ran Asia for Avon because you stuck your hand up and said, I'm willing to do that. You want to do that. You want to be at 35 cents to Singapore or 30 or Abu Dhabi or wherever. And you'll learn a hell of a lot. I think the second is, I think you really have to live in culture and not make culture in your phone. I want you to see in person everything from art to theater to music. Just immerse yourself, because you are going to enable the people who are older than you to see a window that they don't see. And also establish some mentors. This is hugely helpful for me.
Who were your mentors?
Well, first my dad, but somebody who ran an ad agency, and then another one who was, actually Rick will remember this guy, King Harris, who was my father's, son of my father's first employer. And,
Rick calls him a mentor also.
yeah. So, but get those, and early.
Well, mentors
And
are...
teach them something too, because you'll be able to teach them something about platforms or other things.
Mentors are important, but I will say Rick learned 2 languages, Spanish and German, in his late 30s. So it's never too late.
And I married a Latina, and I'm trying to learn Spanish, and I'm on 38th day of Duolingo.
Wait, and you and Claudia have been married for quite a while. You're just now learning
8 years.
Spanish?
Well, it's drip, drip, drip. And she's finally said, listen, your Spanish is so terrible. I can do words for food. This shows you what matters to me.
We have another question back here.
Hi, yes. My name is Juan de la Cruz.
Hi, Juan.
Hi. So I'm like one of the resident Latinos here. So you kind of touched on this a little bit. You talked about acquiring a second language. What are some other core competencies that you find are, really effective in the PR profession?
Okay, so the first thing is in conversation, PR people tend to talk and not listen. I do the opposite. I provoke and then I listen, because I learn a lot more from people talking to me than I do by talking myself. I know what I'm going to say, but I'd like them to talk. And the second is develop your EQ, because again, a lot of PR people are always in sell mode. And at some point, you have to actually sense whether the person is buying or is sick of you selling. And so, and if they're sick of it, just kind of calm down and start a different way. And just let them talk a little. But the best communication is 2-way, not 1-way. And we actually named an agency, our second firm, called Zeno. And this was a Greek philosopher who said that human beings were born with 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. But it's underexploited. So, but seriously, pay attention to your EQ, which...
Do all of y'all know what that means, EQ? Okay,
touchdown.
perfect.
You seem to have EQ. This is good.
We have another question? Right over here.
Hello.
Hello.
My name's Jesus. I wanted to ask you, have you discovered is the most important personal quality you had in order to have become as so effective a leader of industry?
I think I'm a kid from Chicago, and it's not that I don't like New York, but I think Chicago kids like Rick and me are essentially pretty humble, and we work really hard, and we believe in team, and we believe in our country, and we laugh a lot, and we're not about money. You know, I don't think either of us has maximized money. We maximize winning, and I think we like politics in its place, meaning it's interesting, but it didn't go in it. And I think we believe in our families and spending time with our kids and just basic stuff that is good stuff. I remember I used to have a little thing called Kids Day when I brought a little Midwest to the East. So I grew up with things like sack races and one-legged things where you'd like tied your leg and you had to hop on one leg, and egg carry and dunking for apples in a big vat of water. And I don't know. I always thought that was the most fun day of the year. I got to put a whistle on, pretend I was a coach, and order a bunch of little kids around. And anyway.
There was also the egg toss.
Oh yeah, no, well,
the run with the egg.
Run with the egg,
toss.
and the egg is like anyway. And the balloon toss too. I love that.
Balloon toss.
The balloon toss, and you move farther and farther away, and you throw balloons back and forth.
I would add to that, you and Rick both are extremely philanthropic. You care about other people. You want to always, really sincerely care about other people and what you can constantly do to make someone else's life better.
Yeah, well, I'm on 8 boards, nonprofit boards, and you're probably on the same, give or take, or however many. But yeah, give back. It's really important so that others can get up.
I put that right up there with sleep. It's how important it is, I think.
Sleep matters.
Yeah, but helping others matters because it helps them, it helps you too.
True.
So, one more question?
Hello, my name is Deshauna Brown. I'm majoring in Black Studies at PR as well as publishing. And my question to you is, how do you think PR could help some of the grievances in New York, such as the housing crisis, postgraduate job loss, and as well as affordability in New York?
So it's almost like we have two sides not talking. You know, you have the landlords who say it's expensive to run buildings here. It's impossible with regulation. You know, and meanwhile, I think the average rent that people are paying for a 2-bedroom apartment is like $4,000, something crazy, give or take.
Really?
Give or take, 3,000, whatever it is. It's a lot. So how does PR solve that? I hope it makes the case for a real debate. I live down in Soho, and there's a garden called Elizabeth Street Garden, and that was going to be developed into affordable housing, and the community blocked it. But then 2 other spots on Bowery have been opened up. Well, that's a good conversation, and that's a good use of PR, because it forced the people who wanted to preserve to find another option. You can keep this, but you got to find me other options. And that's where we should be, which is to solve things, not just stand up for the garden. That's nice, but people need housing, affordable housing, actually, especially you coming out of school.
We have one more question right up here.
I'm loud. I can probably just say what else.
She says she's loud, so we'll let her go.
My name is Sarah. I'm getting my master's in branding and integrated communications here. This is kind of a personal question for myself. But once I graduate and I try to go into the communications world, do you have any advice for someone like me who is already established in a different industry and how to kind of stand out against people who may have been in communications for years? Like, is there anything that people like me could do differently?
So maybe you know certain industries like fashion really well. That would help. Maybe you're a specialist in certain platforms, like you're a genius at TikTok or, God forbid, or Instagram or whatever. And maybe also you have a background in sports or whatever else. You got to bring something else. especially since you're not coming in at 22, you're going to come in at 26 or whatever the right number is. And you're also going to expect to make more money. So then you have to justify it.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Good for you.
You can do it.
Any other
100%.
questions? Oh, back here, and then we'll come to you.
Hi, my name is Yakov Weiner, also a Chicagoan.
Attaboy.
So I was thinking
The
about...
Bears are terrible.
It's not his fault.
I understand.
I'm thinking about the earlier part of your presentation when you talked about the ethical standing of business and winning people's trust. And I guess I'll say, as a millennial, I do have very low trust in the ethics of big business. And I was wondering, like, how do you respond to, let's say, even the complaints that the demonstrators had about working with Shell or other companies that are contributing to things that are making the world very, very difficult for people?
Sure. I'm glad you asked. So we have a very strong position about climate, which is we'll only work with companies that are in a continuous improvement mode. Now, they make the case that Shell has gone backward on its diversification. They had to do that because the economics of the business are very difficult for wind and solar at the moment, given the changes in regulation. They have to still run a business. We walked away from some parts of the industry because that didn't suit our goals. But I'll also tell you, we've worked with Saudi Arabia. And I feel proud to have done this because we were able to forge a relationship for the Metropolitan Opera with Saudi, and they're going to do 3 weeks of performances in Saudi. To me, this is bridge building through culture, which we should enable. And I only give you 2 examples of, these are choices, and you may differ with that choice, and you may differ with the Shell choice too. But we look at them very carefully. We do not want to be part of the problem. We want to be part of improving the story. And I don't pretend to say that because we're inside the tent that we can really change how clients are. We can move them some, but I can tell you that there are different shades of gray and there are different interpretations of what is appropriate for business. And I'd like to say that within our category, we take these challenges the most seriously. Most of our competitors do tobacco, they do guns, they do whatever comes in. I don't believe in any of that.
So you don't take any gun or tobacco clients?
Nope.
Oh,
Nope.
I did not know that. I'm
No.
so proud of you.
No.
That's
No.
awesome.
No, it's the first decision I made as CEO when I came in. I said, we're done with BAT, out. And I feel really happy about that. And it was also a good business decision. We were doing pharmaceutical business. How do you do that? It's contradictory. So, but continue to press us and others on this subject because we need to hear you and we need to have the debate. And you need to at least understand the how we got to the decision. And we have a climate advisory board. We have people who are professors and from India and China and the States, and we have, and the former Prime Minister of Denmark is on this, and she's very, and we debate and discuss who we should take, who we shouldn't. And so there we are.
Interesting. Well, time for one more question, if we have one. One more.
My name's Abdul. I'm a business major. Something I want to ask you is, if you were a Gen Z, like in our shoes, what would be your next course of action? Like, would you start a business? Would you further your education? Or would you like get into some type of field?
So I don't want you to think so in a binary way. I want you to think I can do a business and I can start a business and I can also be in school. And I want you to think, do I want to go to a small company or a big company? Like my stepson is trying to evaluate, does he go to a 200-person robotics company or does he try and get a job at Google? He's going to graduate from Rice next year. And I said, I can't tell you that. You have to decide. But that you should aspire to go to fast-growing areas. Like, I went into the PR business, it was a pretty small industry. Now it's a much bigger industry. And robotics is clearly an area that's going to be important. You know, using robots in Amazon distribution centers and things like that. And I also think there'll be an explosion in health because my generation, the boomers, are aging. And you know, there's going to be a lot of health services businesses that entrepreneurs can start. And I also want to just tell you a quick entrepreneur story. Through Claudia, my wife, I met a woman who came here from Mexico, and she had the idea for little ice cream pops, like I call them popsicles, but anyway, that's very retro, but popsicles. And paletas, is that it? Okay, there we go. So paletas, and she was bringing them from her home, and she had a way of making them. And she started with a little truck on the High Line, and she was selling paletas, and she got enough money to collect, and she was working at night in a restaurant as a sous chef, and so she had, you know, sort of two incomes, and she was making the paletas down somewhere, like in Tribeca, I don't know where, in Brooklyn somewhere, and then she got enough money to have a store, and she was 2018, 2019, and she had made it, and then COVID hit, and she lost her store. Now, she could have folded up her tent and gone back to Mexico. You know what she said? Nope. What am I going to do? I'm going to cater food to people who want me to do that. And so then she has gone into the paletas business again, and she's doing the catering, and she has her store back, and she did it. And that's the story of you know, being an entrepreneur. Because you know, you run into a wall and you get your face smashed. And go, I shouldn't have done that. You know, pick that up and go the other way around it. But I just would encourage all of you, develop a thick hide and resilience, because you know, you're going to have rejection. But again, if you ask me, the number one characteristic of me, knock me down 10, I'm up 11. And that's an important lesson. Just don't ever give up. Ever, ever, ever.
Just really quickly, because you mentioned robotics, you mentioned the health industry,
yes,
and you also mentioned food. So those are three areas right there that
100%.
What any other industries that you would recommend to them that soon they're going to be out in the workforce, that you see longevity for, that's not going to be replaced by AI or
I think the PR business is going to kick the advertising agency's butt. And this is not very popular because I don't say this to too many advertising people, but advertising is going to shrink because people don't believe it. And all these marketers are believing in this thing called the paid flywheel, where basically you put in $10 and 100 comes out the other end. Well, that presumes that I know exactly what you like to buy. That you have those glasses because you have that shirt and those jeans and those shoes, and because your dad or mom drive that car. I don't think humans are that predictable. I think humans go on emotion. I think they go on what's cool, and that's moving all the time. And so I like PR's chances. So we're trying to build an earned flywheel. And so that's my big ambition for the next couple of years. Based on earned media. Why does it matter? Because LLM search, how many of you do search through your ChatGPT or other, any of you?
Yep.
Good. So, and how many of you use Google or other? Okay, so switch to your LLM search. This is good. It suits my thesis. Anyway, the LLM search is driven by earned media. Stories that are in earned publications or a company's own website content. That's what drives LLM search. So the more that goes up, so therefore I'm recruiting all of you to do LLM search, the better my business will do. So that's why we were going to beat advertising. You always have to have an enemy too. This is good.
and know your enemy.
Like Chicago Bears and Green Bay Packers, right? I hate those green jerseys.
Again, it's not his fault.
No, forget about them. It's all right. They'll be good somewhere. When you're my age, they'll be good again.
Richard, thank you so much for joining us.